To introduce our speakers for this Connect and Learn, they include Carolyn Gonzalez. Carolyn, if you could say hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
And she is the Community Development Officer for Capital for Change, which is the largest community development financial institution in the state of Connecticut. And our other guest is Sabrina Tucker Barrett. Sabrina, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
She is the founder and CEO of Girls for Technology, which is an ESO or entrepreneurial service support organization. I will get into more detail as to exactly what that kind of organization is and what it does. And my name is Michael Van Leesten, and I'm a director at Social Venture Partners Connecticut. So with that, I'll spend the next 10 or 12 minutes reviewing the ecosystem. So the first thing is, why are we supporting minority business development? Well, it's well known and well researched that there are there's an extreme racial wealth gap in the United States, and small business development is one of the primary means of wealth building in the US. It's also fits right with our three strategic pillars of race equity, workforce development, and even early childhood, because many early child care providers are in fact small businesses. And probably most importantly, business formation is really a demonstration of a sense of agency and self-reliance, and which is critically important, and something we learned was very important to organizations working on systems change in the state of Connecticut. So what we learned, how did we get here? Well, last year, it actually funded earlier this year, but we started in 2020 our Race Equity Fund, and it was focused on community-based organizations that were working on systems change. It was a participatory grant-making pilot where the funding decisions were made by informed community members and not necessarily SVP partners or staff. The grantees, each of whom received $25,000, included participants in the health education sector, literary arts, mental health, workforce development, food insecurity, immigration, and self-advocacy and decision-making. What's most important is what is in bold in the last point, in the last bullet point. All of them were focused on systems change, economic self-empowerment, and/or development of self-advocacy skills. So it's really about building a sense of agency, not necessarily just donating more money to in the cause of service. So then why should we consider small business, and in particular what we call the entrepreneurial ecosystem? I'll describe what it is, but we all know what an ecosystem is. It's all the elements of an environment that influence a particular actor within that environment. So there are very deep economic, racial, and gender disparities in Connecticut and in this country, particularly with respect to income, wealth, rates of entrepreneurship, and even access to capital. In order to fix this, we need alignment and coordination among some very important parties in that ecosystem, and I'll describe them more fully in a moment. And lastly, ultimately what we want to do is increase and improve support for small business entrepreneurs. So generally speaking, the consensus is that there are 6 components to an entrepreneurial ecosystem: policy, finance, culture, support, human capital, and markets. And we're going to we're focused primarily, or at least right now, as of today, as this project evolves that we're working on, finance, culture, support, and human capital. So markets, for instance, include things like purchasing and distribution networks or new product development. Culture might include innovation, risk-taking, wealth building, establishing the social status of entrepreneurs. Supports include legal, accounting, technical experts like the ESOs. Human capital, particularly with respect to human capital development, includes also the entrepreneurial support organizations and developing core competencies and skills for the entrepreneurs. Likewise, policy would include regulatory issues and regulations that may inhibit the development of small business and trying to change them. And finance, of course, is funding, whether it be venture capital, loans, grants. There are a whole host of instruments that are used in this space to fund entrepreneurs. So that's the framework, and this framework has existed for at least 10 years now. It started at some business schools in the Northeast. So in Connecticut, the capital and financing component of the entrepreneurial ecosystem include what are called community development financial institutions. They include Capital for Change, HEDCO, et cetera. Sorry, there's a C missing there, et cetera. These CDFIs, you're going to see a lot of acronyms in this space. The CDFIs were basically first established in the 60s to contribute to underbanked and unbanked communities and people within those communities. Then there are commercial banks which often lend money to CDFIs to re-lend. The state government, for instance, the Department of Economic and Community Development had a recent grant to support this, the entrepreneurial sector in our economy. Philanthropy, for example, the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven's Mission Investments Company, as well as smaller but influential efforts by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, also are looking to be a catalyst in this space. The federal government, I think most people are familiar with the Small Business Association. Then there are even grants by some ESOs, and All Our Kin, which focuses on childcare workers, and WBDC, the Women's Business Development Council, which focuses on women business owners, have all had grant programs. And lastly, there's venture capital, including business brokers. And not to say that this is an absolutely comprehensive list, but these are the major actors in this space. And they cover, as I described before, sort of the finance, culture, and support. The finance obviously is the money. The culture is how you approach a borrower, how you approach a particular entrepreneur, and how you analyze the underwriting risk associated with them. And there are alternative ways of doing that that are being investigated in order to make access to capital less burdensome and easier for these organizations. And likewise, there's collaboration with ESOs that support entrepreneurs, or sometimes CDFIs have these entrepreneurs service support organizations embedded within their organizational structures. So there's kind of an overlap here. So these ESOs, so this is really, the ESOs form a linchpin. What they do is they are uniformly, almost uniformly, nonprofit organizations that provide curriculum, mentoring, and technical assistance to replicate the resources and networks available to better resourced populations. The sector itself is highly fragmented. There are dozens of them, large and small, throughout the state. They're often differentiated by a particular type or types of specialization. These would include geography, demographic specialization. For instance, as I mentioned, WBDC focuses on women-owned businesses. Industry sector, for instance, All Our Kin focuses on childcare workers. Likewise, demographically, Sabrina's organization focuses on women as well. Then there's the state of development of an organization. You could have an organization or a company that's really only in the idea stage. You could have one that's ready to launch. You could have one that has launched and has been around for a number of years and is at an inflection point. And lastly, there are innovation companies versus what are called small minority enterprises. Innovation companies tend to have long ramp-ups. Biotechnology, for instance, is one of those. Some technology companies, where small minority enterprises are more typically companies that do not have the same barriers to entry based on capital requirements. And again, the ESOs cover three of these components of the ecosystem as well. So, and in particular, I already explained culture and support, but they're also in the business of human capital development. And human capital development includes confidence building, basically giving people the knowledge and then building on that and to give them the confidence to pursue, in many cases, what amounts to their dream to start their own business. Do not try to read this, you'll hurt your eyes. But this chart will be included. It is a detail of an entrepreneurial ecosystem diagram that includes all of the subcomponents of each of those 6 segments. So this is going to be included in your in the slide deck that will be shared with you after this. Okay. So I'm going to take this off because well, I can leave that there in case some of you want to, but really what I'd like to do is I'm going to stop the share because I have to start off. I just want to ask Carolyn a question that she can answer about CDFIs and Sabrina Tucker-Barrett a question about that she can answer to give you guys more context from their perspective. And then we'd really like to open it up to any and all questions that you have. They can be, there is no such thing as a stupid question. We're all learning. So go into learning mode. And likewise, as I said before, we're all learning. So if there's feedback or questions or really pointed questions that you think need to be addressed, please do not hesitate to ask and we will do our best to answer them. And if we can't answer them, we'll certainly take them under consideration and get back to you. So with that said, I'm going to stop the share so that way we can get to and if you put your view on speaker view, you will be able to see Carolyn first as I ask her the question. So Carolyn, what do you see as the most important things Capital for Change can do as a CDFI to support equitable or entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Thank you, Michael, for having me here today. And you did give me a little bit of time to think a little bit about this question. And I did, and I thought I'd take a step back from products and programs and, go down that road and start at listening and learning. I do believe that as a community development financial institution, we're created really to meet the gap when it comes to access to capital, mostly in disadvantaged communities all over the country. But in order for us to do that effectively, I do think that CDFIs need to be active listeners and to constantly learn more and more about what the best practices are among their peers across the country. Having said that, what Capital for Change has been doing over the past few years is just that. And our board chair, Dorothy Adams, I don't know if she's listening here today, but she set out a few years ago to do just that, to really try to understand the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state of Connecticut. And she went out and discovered quite a bunch of ESOs from all across the state and listened and learned about what the gaps were for entrepreneurs and particularly entrepreneurs of color, mostly in targeted communities. After doing that for a bit of time, she learned that what we thought at the time was needed most in the state of Connecticut was early stage capital for businesses in these communities, for entrepreneurs, and that the best way to do that would be to really work in tandem, in partnership with entrepreneur support organizations like Sabrina's, hi Sabrina, to help deliver the products that the entrepreneurs needed and also the technical assistance that they would require in order to grow their business. Secondly, I would say that it's important for a community development financial institution to establish trust, to be the type of entity where, since we're at this nexus of people that want to make a difference in these types of communities and or work with specific populations, we're at the nexus of doing that good work with being able to access the capital that's going to help to make it happen. And as that person as that entity in the middle, that we need to be the type of organization that is trusted and rooted in community. Seeing it's the first word in our names as community development financial institutions. And lastly, it's to take risk. We are lenders. We do have to be mindful of risk and manage our portfolios very carefully, so that our funding does revolve and then is made available for new and exciting projects and to more borrowers and to be effective in the communities that we're working. But we were designed in a way to take more risk than your typical financial institution. And so we have to be mindful of that as we develop new products and learn how to balance that risk as financial institutions. The president of Capital for Change is also on this meeting. So Cal, if there's anything I've missed, feel free to add it on later. But I would say that those are the three things that I think are most important for C4C to do in the entrepreneurial ecosystem right now.
Here, thank you. And Sabrina, so the question we have for you is, as a leader of an ESO, what are the long-term goals of your organization? What's your mission and vision?
Yeah, so I'd like, for those who may not know much about Girls for Technology, when they first kind of look at the name, you may think that we are only maybe work with just girls, K through 12. We are much more than that. We have our workforce development training, and then our Building for Equity is really an accelerator for women of color to accelerate their business, even past COVID. And so I would say ways in which that I'd really like to be able to strengthen the organization is by being able to bring on more partners, strengthen our workforce development by building our capacity, increasing our donor base, so that more people know about the organization, and then being able to have more resources and opportunities for the organization.
Okay, and so with that, we'd like to take any questions that anyone might have about the ecosystem that we described, about ESOs in particular, or about CDFIs in particular. So a question for Carolyn is, how do CDFI loans differ from SBA sponsored loans?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Michael? I wasn't
Sure. How do CDFI loans differ from SBA sponsored loans?
So typically, at least in the CDFIs that I've worked for in the past that do small business lending, Capital for Change has not fully launched its new small business product right now, but to compare an SBA loan and a typical kind of CDFI loan is that we would actually we tend to create products that are different from SBA loans, because if you can get an SBA loan, we would direct you to an SBA loan. So we're creating the product that's very different. And we're willing to work at the local level, at the grassroots level, with folks to help with on the credit building aspect. We may overlook some credit issues, and we work with the borrower very personally. So it's not a formula. It's not a formula, at least not in the products that I've worked with in the past.
Thank you. Okay, do we have other questions? Okay, it says, some communities are looking to develop an incubator model for childcare providers. How would the ESO developing the incubator viewed in terms of funding access versus the providers who are using the ESO space? I don't quite understand that question. How would the ESO?
Mike, I think, Michael, what they're saying is the funding to the organization, the ESO itself, versus funding to their clients.
Oh, I
And
understand.
I would say in Capital for Change's standpoint, we do nonprofit lending. So we have looked at Dollar Ken and Reset, a few others, to share private information. And we will continue to do that. So our goal is to not only work with the service, with the clients, but also to work with organizations where necessary and appropriate, where we can bring resources to the table. For example, I was talking to an ESO in Waterbury this morning that I wasn't aware of. They focus in the south end of Waterbury, which is largely Hispanic, and they do training, and they're focused on daycare, and they're trying to figure out how to get their candidates financing because they've gone to other lenders in the state and they've not been able to take care of it. So we're talking about how we might be able to do that. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to add? Thank you, Cal. Okay. Oh, and Cal is the CEO of Capital for Change.
That's me.
The other thing is there, with respect to funding, it all depends in terms of funding ESOs versus funding the providers who are in the ESO space. It all depends on which funder you're talking about. So, for instance, the foundations or philanthropic funding is oftentimes focused on the ESOs, who then influence or inform the capacity of the small businesses to actually function and succeed. That's not always the case, but that tends to be the case. Whereas an organization like a CDFI or even the Small Business Administration or whatever definitely is focused on that small business itself. Sabrina, Martha Mincer asks, can you give us a success story from your organization?
Sure. So two that pop up. One is from our K-12 model, which is heavily STEM-based. We have a young lady by the name of Christina. Christina was really on kind of the trajectory, I would say, she only envisioned herself being a math teacher. Her mom was a teacher, her grandmother was a teacher, and there was an opportunity for her to be able to participate in our programs. This was pre-COVID. In 2017, we actually took a field trip to Google. And it was through that field trip that it really opened up Christina's mind that she could not only be a math teacher, but she could also do something within computer science. And I am so excited to say today, Christina is graduating from Emory University this year, and she is graduating with a minor in math and a major in computer science, and has been offered a job at Google, making $130,000 starting off. So that's one that I always get really excited about. Another one is for our Pipeline 4.0 program. And our Pipeline 4.0 program is really around workforce development training for those who are either underrepresented, underemployed, or not employed at all. You have to be in between the ages of 18 to 24. Colise actually just went through our workforce development training last year, actually in the midst of COVID. She was kind of going job to job, different jobs, couldn't find exactly what she wanted to do. She, is in community college, and through our Pipeline 4.0 training, which is specifically focused on either we have an IT track, technology track, or entrepreneurship. She went through the technology track, and she has now been offered a job at one of a new company called Galaxy Solutions. And we are really excited about that. It has really changed, I would say, her trajectory on life. She's back in school and has this job making a little bit over $40,000, and we are really excited about that. So we have several success stories within the workforce development training, K-12 space, and yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina. Is there any other questions? Okay, here we go. One of the things that's worth mentioning is the work that SVP has done with ESOs, and in particular, we are currently working with CoLab in New Haven. The interesting thing about CoLab is that they have hundreds of alums who they've helped facilitate the startup businesses, and I was wondering if there's someone on the call, Scott Milland, who is a SVP partner, if he would be open to explaining a little bit about that project and what the impetus for that, or what the rationale for the project is, and what they hope to accomplish, just to give you all an idea of what is happening in this space.
Well, hi, Michael.
Hi,
hi everyone.
Put you on the spot a little bit, but I figured you'd be able to handle this one, given how in-depth the work has been.
Excellent, excellent. So CoLab is, as Michael pointed out, a New Haven-based ESO that its mission is really to help, it's an accelerator, or to help businesses be created and to foster that are being run by people of color and women in particular. It's been a successful organization. They've had a number of food-based and non-food-based businesses graduate over the last few years. What the project is about, it started as a small scope and then got much larger over time, as many of these things do. And what the project is about was a review of their curriculum as an accelerator. And basically a review of what are they doing, are there ways that they can improve that curriculum, as well as to create a graduate program. So they have been very successful in helping these entrepreneurs get their businesses off the ground. They have alumni who have up and running businesses, and now they want to have a program that supports those the alumni as they look to build their businesses to the next level. And so we've been working with them on that, as well as the initial curriculum review of how their accelerator works. I think a big component, or I should say a large component, of the alumni program is helping them make that first, for many of them, that first attempt at third-party financing, whether that financing would be a loan, or would be an equity infusion, or some other thing. And so we're sort of in the middle of it right now, but we plan to pilot a graduate program coming this year, actually starting in December. So we're putting the finishing touches on that right now.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Another question that came up was, how does SVP plan to work with ESOs through the Race Equity Fund? And I would also include, just going forward in the future, because it would include the Race Equity Fund. So the first thing that we're going to start working on, and we've just had some critical meetings this morning about it, is we're working on developing what we're calling an ESO Collaborative. It's a collaboration. It would be a collaboration of ESOs in Connecticut. In that process, they would do a couple of things. The first is basically figure out how to work together to deliver their services more efficiently and effectively, given how fragmented the space is in terms of ESOs is right now. So for instance, they all have their own curriculum. They all have their own key performance indicators. They all have specific demographic foci. They have different geographic locations and geographic foci. And what we want to do is help get them to a point where they are collaborating on things like shared services, common curriculum standards, some common KPIs, so they might be able to fundraise as a coalition, perhaps work on policy initiatives in a collective way, because the only way you can really foment systems change is by working as a collaborative. Individual organizations tend not to be able to generate tremendous systems change. That's not always the case, but most often it is. So that's the first piece. So with that in mind, the whole idea of strengthening the delivery of services from these ESOs is absolutely critical to developing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in the communities that we're talking about, in particular urban communities that are under-resourced. And I don't just mean underbanked, I mean under-resourced with respect to the knowledge of how to navigate the entrepreneurial space and all of the technical issues that go along with that aren't necessarily intuitive, but simply need to be learned. And so with that as a backdrop, the idea for Race Equity Fund 2, extending from the whole idea of self-empowerment and sense of agency and self-efficacy, is to raise money from the SVP partners to fund this ESO collaborative and the ESOs within the collaborative. How that will all work, or how that all might work, has yet to be worked out, but it's critically important that people at least first initially understand the nature of the ecosystem, the nature of the players, what their influence and power is in that space, and their importance in that space. So we're going through it step by step, and we're building out the collaborative. For instance, we're talking to a number of ESOs, nearly, I think I have a list of nearly a dozen who could potentially be part of this collaborative. I have to credit Sabrina with sparking the idea for this, for us to pursue this project. And also I've taken inspiration from an organization called Cameo. That's an acronym, but cameonetwork.org is the name of the organization. And it was started almost 25 years ago in California with this express purpose in mind, to take all of these ESOs and form a collaboration so that they work more efficiently and effectively and have some common standards and common tools. And so that's where we're headed. And more to come on that as it develops. And it's literally developing day by day, week by week. We're in the very formative stages, which then Tracy Madden Hennessy asked, how might you be considered for the ESO Collaborative? I would say, please contact me. I will write my email address in the chat room for all of you to reach out to me if you don't feel if a topic you want to discuss isn't necessarily facilitated in this kind of space, but I would be happy to have a conversation with you. We actually haven't, I mean, this idea is in concept only, and we haven't really developed the criteria as to who would be involved. What we are looking for are the ESOs that have a particular strength in a particular geographic area and a particular focus. And we would want them all to, in an ideal world, and I know we don't live in one, but in an ideal world, we want them to complement each other. One of the challenges in this space will be that there is not enough funding to support all of the ESOs out there. So there's a sense of scarcity, and that can make collaboration very difficult and make a create a competitive environment. And that's what we'll need to work to tamp down in order to work more effectively together and make everybody better off. And that will take envisioning by people. So if you're an ESO and you're very, very into the idea of collaboration, I'm very open to having a conversation with you about this. Do we have any other questions?
Lauren Coakley Vincent may have a question. Lauren, do you want to?
Hi, thank you. Actually, I think the ESO collaborative concept answered it a bit. I I work for the Downtown Bridgeport Special Services District, which is a business improvement organization. And so we have candidates that would, potentially benefit from the support of an ESO or the services of an ESO. And as Carolyn knows deeply well, we used to have a great infrastructure through her organization, but, resources and staffers and such, that service no longer exists. So I'm wondering how to plug back in because we have businesses in our service area that most definitely would benefit from this, whatever the collaborative shapes up into and is able to offer. So I think the structure is coming into place, but if I maybe missed like an opportunity to plug in, I would love to hear more about that.
Okay, and Carolyn, because Carolyn has been spearheading with Dorothy Adams the convening of dozens of ESOs over the past couple of years, she has the most substantive contact with the greatest number of ESOs throughout the state. And I think she's, I get a sense that they touch the surface, given how many there are out there. So I think the key thing would be to have a conversation with her. She would have an idea of who the applicable players are, depending on what business they're in, what their geographic location is, what any other points of emphasis might be, and then go from there. It is challenging in the sense that you're describing one of the challenges that has to be addressed in this space. If you're an entrepreneur, how do you find one of these things? How do you find one of these organizations, right? That's why we need to collaborate and team up and communicate better with the actual, communities that we're trying to serve. So again, and I say all this to say that I would recommend reaching out to Carolyn if you haven't already. And I apologize, I don't have a deep knowledge of the space in terms of all of the players, but she does. Does that answer your question?
I would just echo that. And Lauren is definitely on our list already and has been invited to some of the convenings, because we do realize that there are some areas of the state where there are indeed gaps, right? There are gaps or the missing connection. And Cal has just turned his camera on, and I think Cal probably wants to comment on that.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, there is a technology effort underfoot that we're supporting, which is an attempt to create a new web portal for small business purposes, and that will include, it'll act as a sales funnel for the ESOs, and that you can advertise your services and provide some detail on it. So if people are looking for someone, this site will help to link the ESO with the inquiry that's coming in, utilizing current fintech technology. If any of you have gone to Lending Tree or Mortgage Tree or whatever the fintech sites are to get a loan, you answer some questions, and then you get feedback, you get connections. They connect you with people by providing your information to them, or vice versa, they give you the information or the resources that look to fit within your scope, whether it's geography, business segment, talent, experience, or your specific needs for education, certification, those sorts of things. Anyway, that'll be coming out in the first quarter, I believe, of next year. We'll also offer lending loans on it that are you can apply for directly on the site, credit builder, credit cards, things like that. So it's an attempt to, at least from a digital standpoint, bring that industry together and connect it with customers in a more efficient standard. Historically, we've given people pieces of paper and said, here, call one of these people or go to one of these URLs. And it's really hard if you don't have a lot of time or knowledge about what you're trying to accomplish to know who you really need to talk to. So this gives an opportunity to the industry to be able to represent itself in a more current standpoint to customers who are seeking information and assistance, and act as a convener for that. So it'll be really interesting when it comes out.
Thanks for that, Cal. Another question that came up was from Faith Viegas, who asked if we heard about the work of the Greater Bridgeport STEM ecosystem. I'm not familiar with that, but that's not dispositive of anything.
Faith, is that the program that was managed or run out of the United Way?
She
So yeah,
says
so
yes.
yeah, so then yes, I have heard some about that program. It'd be great, Sabrina, if we could make that connection for you too.
Sure, thank you.
Oh, okay.
All right, Faith apologizes. Her microphone is malfunctioning, so she can't speak. That's why she didn't get on and respond. Does anybody else have any other questions before I sort of close this up with a closing statement?
I don't have a question, but I do have kind of a final comment, Michael, that I want to put out there.
Sure.
I want to put out there in the spirit of talking about ecosystems and collaboration and such in the state of Connecticut, kind of back up to the higher level, right? So, you know, we all know, unfortunately, that in the state of Connecticut, we haven't been known for our spirit of collaboration, or at least not effective, coordinated, efficient collaboration. And Cal just talked briefly about a possible digital solution, at least in this space, for that sort of thing. But as folks that are interested in you know, small business development, entrepreneurship, particularly entrepreneurship for people of color, and the type of resource coordination, collaboration that it's going to take for us to actually really be able to effectively deliver services, products, programs, the way that we want to. I think it would be really great if we could all keep in mind how important it is for us to be able to collaborate and to advocate for that type of resource coordination, collaboration, wherever we can be heard. And that would be a very important piece of Connecticut's entrepreneurial ecosystem, of strengthening Connecticut's entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's it. That's my soapbox comment for the day.
Well, thank you, because that overlaps with what I was going to close with understanding again and reiterating that it turns out that the ESOs play a critical role in the successful development of small business in the state, especially among women and people of color. That is undoubted. That has been proven. There is a considerable amount of burgeoning support for this concept of collaboration from ESOs. Capital for Change definitely has been a supporter of this, and from the large community foundations, Fairfield, New Haven, and Hartford community foundations. Given the need, the demand for the services of the ESOs far exceeds their capacity to provide those services right now. And but they are critical to the development of small business. And so what I'd like for you, when I say you, I really mean the SVP partners on this call, as well as any other interested party, is think about how you can contribute to strengthening these key participants in the ecosystem. So when Cal talks about creating a funnel for them, so that way they can have an easier and more lubricated connection to the people who they serve. Or when we talk about this collaborative and developing best practices and KPIs and joint ventures, and also developing a means for them to seek funding on a coalition basis, on the basis of their acting as a coalition, et cetera, et cetera. All of these are critical in order to meet the demand for their services. And ultimately, what we're really talking about is closing the opportunity gap, giving people who have a proven, demonstrated entrepreneurial fervor, you know, that's well known in these communities, and in particular in the immigrant community. How do we capitalize on that as a society? How do we make sure that happens in an equitable way? And so if this interests you at all, and you're interested in participating in the project, or you're participating in terms of helping to fund these organizations through our Race Equity Fund and through what we hope will be joint ventures with other philanthropists. Please be sure to reach out to me or Mark or Carolyn or Sabrina. We just need to continue this conversation. Lastly, I can tell you that 6 months ago, I did not know that I would be speaking to you about this, that I was getting to understand what the ESOs were and what they did. And it turns out that there's a lot of energy to sort of, for this sector, from within the sector, for this sector to evolve and to become much stronger in the service of the budding entrepreneurs. And in that light, Sabrina would also like to mention an upcoming pitch competition, which I think many of the ESOs have these, and Girls for Technology is going to have one, but it'll give you a sense, if you decide to attend this, it'll give you a sense of how these things work once they're all ready to go and pitch. So as a new business. So Sabrina, go ahead.
Sure. So we have our inaugural pitch competition coming up. Girls for Technology wanted some dynamic mentors and coaches over the course of 5 weeks that worked with 9 women across the state of Connecticut virtually. And so they are going to be pitching their business, in hopes of winning either cash prizes of $10,000, $5,000, or $3,000. So 9 women, 1 stage is going to be at the Society Room in Hartford on Thursday. Would love if anyone could come out and support. It's going to be a great time for you to learn about Black and Brown women entrepreneurs. Most of their businesses are either between 1 to 5 years in business. Revenue model, or not revenue model, but their revenue is under 150,000, and so they are going to be pitching their business. I will put the link in the chat if anyone is interested in attending.
And this could, for anyone who's interested, I've attended some of these presented by other organizations, including Reset and CoLab, and it is fairly informative. It really gives you a much more visceral sense of what's going on and what has happened and the work that's being done. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to definitely attend one of these pitch competitions. And with that said, I want to thank Carolyn, Sabrina, Cal, Scott, all of the people who asked questions for contributing to this. I look forward to any feedback that any of you might want to provide offline, either in praise or critical of both this webinar or the project or the idea, the sector. Any and all input would be greatly appreciated. We are in the very, very beginning stages. And lastly, I would be remiss. We all do a lot of work here at Social Venture Partners, and we have a number of wonderful partners who help us get things done, and they are volunteers. And I hope I'm not embarrassing her, but I have to take my hat off to Martha Mincer, who is on this call right now, because she has been my accountability buddy, and she has kept the train moving on these Connect and Learns and a lot of other work that we do at SVP. So I greatly appreciate her input and feedback over the course of putting this together. So I want to thank everybody for your time. I really, truly appreciate it. If you ever have a personal conversation with me, you'll come to understand how deeply my heart is engaged in this particular sector of work. And it's been my family for a long time. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and please be in touch. I'd be happy to have a conversation with any and all of you, no matter how long it takes and no matter how many of you there are.